one of these. This is, I think this guy's a good companion because he's the natural, he's pretty much the natural of this. Well, there's three of them. There's three of them, you see, and then this is, you've got the memory head, and then you've got the, then you've got this one that's a little bit more, but you can see it's the same guy, pretty much. And so they're kind of nice. They're all kind of nice to have as a sort of a companion, if that was something that you wanted to really. They have different ones too. They have both female and male. And they have different cultures with the white cast. I've got a little bit of my light source is coming from my above light here, but it's a little bit of shadow here, so it's going to come in from that direction. A little bit of liquid here. Sorry, I'm getting things out here. This is my cleaner. So I'm going to slightly just tone my surface. I always like to get rid of the white, just because I know there's really nothing white. It's going to be, even though it's a white head, believe it or not, there's nothing that's going to really be in my painting, maybe except for a highlight or two. So just by toning your white canvas gets you that much closer to a completed painting. I don't want to tone it too dark. And by the way, I'm toning it with my Gamsol, not the liquid, because I want the Gamsol to dry quicker. And this will dry pretty quick. Wiping off the excess a little bit here, so it's almost dry already. Something like that. Trying to get it a little drier for the, sorry, this little camera. If I touch it once, it just goes back and forth forever. All right, so I've just got a brush kind of like this that will be sort of my drawing brush, and I just come up and grab a little bit of the, oops, sliding all over the place, my liquid here, and I'm just going to mix up some of my black color with a little bit of the liquid, not too much, just so it's kind of some nice drawing, medium for drawing. So somebody tell me, what's the first thing I'm going to do? What's my first mark? What should I do?
Top and bottom of head and chin.
Yeah, I got to size it, right? So I can make my top and bottom there, right?
Hey Rob, what black are you using?
Well, actually, because my true black is at the school, this is actually a Payne's gray.
Oh yeah. Looks really blue. Like a
Yeah,
blue gray.
if you were to mix it's a cool black. The Payne's gray is a very much of a cool tone black for sure. Always my best guess, right? Always my best guess. I don't know. Life size, or maybe just a little under life size. These are pretty much life size heads, or close to it. They might be a little smaller than life size. I think they make them fairly life size. So now I'm going to be measuring. I can't stick my brush right on top of the, just, and then, and if you're there painting somebody sitting in front of you, you have to do this. You have to hold your brush out in front of them. Of course, probably won't be this close to the model, but it might be back here a ways. And you notice how much smaller when I move my hand away from the model. See how much smaller. And this is kind of where you guys would be sitting in the room, or if you're having somebody sit for you. So this is the problem why we don't do sight sizing in this class, because if we did sight sizing, then we'd say, okay, well, there's the width, and then I bring it down here. You can see how small it is, right? But we can measure because we measure width versus the height. So I'm going to go from side of the head to the side of the head. Underneath the chin, forehead, bring it up. See how much more of that distance goes into it. So I did it for the camera. Now I've got to do it for me because the camera, I've already made a mark actually on this head because I know that it's right there. And so if I bring my thumb up to that point, it's about 1 1/4 of this length. So the width of this, there's about 1 1/4 of that width that should be the length of the head. So let's see what I did with my 4 marks here. 1 and close to 1/4. It's almost 1/3. That means it's probably, I need to come down a little bit on the height. 1. There it is. That initial measurement is so important. Most people, not you guys, because you're learning this, but most people, when they draw a portrait or paint a portrait, they skip this. And then they can't figure out why their incredible painting, consistency, color, temperature, all the values are correct. And then they can't understand why it doesn't look like the person, because they skip this important step. Like, oh, I don't need to do that. I know how to paint. I know how to make the paint look really cool, which they can, which they do. I know how to make my brush strokes, which they are. But when it's all said and done, it doesn't even look like the person.
Rob, why do you start with guessing instead of jumping into measuring?
What was that, Alongo?
Why do you start guessing instead of starting with measuring and making your marks?
Oh, I think always making your first initial marks by your own visual measurements is best, because it's actually exercising your eye and brain muscles to just visually do it first and then check how well you did. That's why I always measure. I always make my marks first and then I measure. Oh, you can measure first. It's a little more technical that way, but some people like to do that. But I think you're exercising your ability by just making these marks, and I say guess because I know they're probably not going to be right, but I'm just visually looking, and then I check it. then I check it, see how well I did. Is that what you're asking, Alongo?
Correct. That's what, yeah, you answered my question. It's more of training yourself. Now that you mentioned, it makes sense. For example, if you're randomly sitting and drawing some stranger in some place, you can't be sticking your pencil and measuring them.
Yeah, there you go. That's why you get your visual measurement really well. You just start doing that visual measurement, and that's a good thing. You know, guys like Richard Schmidt, some of these guys, they're so good at their visual measuring, they can just go in there and start, you know, working in some area and keep moving out. But they still measure. I watch him. I watch him do one of his demos, the captain's portrait, Richard Schmidt. He's still measuring.
Rob, is there a trick to determining on your brush what's a half and what's a third? I mean, it's so hard to know exactly what a fourth is.
Rob, I think your video stopped, or it's my internet.
Is it stop for everyone else?
No, it's still going for me.
No, it's still going.
It's stopped for me.
Is it going? Is it going now?
No. I just see your name.
You see that?
There I go. Yeah.
Some kind of drag. I don't know. My internet. Well, in answer Elodie's question, you know, what's a fourth or a third of your brush? That's a bit of a guess too. But you know, when you're holding your brush out and you come up here and you say, you know, if there's the width of it, and you come up to that. Well, yeah, it's a bit of a guess. I mean, you could actually use a ruler if you wanted to really. Some people will even use little rulers. You know, if you really wanted to measure that out, that would be, you know, something you could do. But checking angles. If I got this proportion correct, then I can just start. I'm still doing some bit of guesswork here. And we make these tick marks, bottom of the nose. These are all guesses too, Alongo. Not really guesses, but you could say they're more like what I see where they should be. Top of the keystone, down the nose, bottom of the nose, the upper lip. Need a little bit of space here for. Put a little space there to show that's the, and then here's the bottom of the lip. That plane there, and the bottom of the chin. That line right there, just kind of helping me where that dark and light is for a minute. I'm doing a lot of, you notice I'm doing a lot of angular kinds of motions here. Straight lines for now. I can make marks like this. I'm trying to find where that point is there, where the corner of the forehead is. So making these little points of where things are happening. And then I can, once I get a few marks there, that point right there is really important because it's the corner of the forehead. And I know there's a plane right there. See, you can see where the temple of the head's turning back, right there. Point of the forehead over here. That's a plane change right there. On this guy, you can see those planes pretty well. This is a little bit of mapping. And I know some of this is not going to be completely accurate. This is what I've got to get something down to see, what's happening. I've got to get something down to compare it. I don't know if something's going to be right or wrong until I put something down. I put this line represented the bottom of the eye socket. This line represented the top of the eye socket. So let's measure some of these tick marks. See, I don't have a lot of time invested in this yet. And so if I measure these tick marks and they're in the right location, then I know I'm probably doing pretty well. So if I hold my brush out here again, and I'm going, man, let's go to the bottom of the nose to the chin. Let's say the bottom of the nose to the chin and see if that's similar to something else. Bottom of the nose to the keystone. I've already got a mark there for this particular head, but I notice on this particular guy here, from the bottom of the nose is the same. I'm sorry, from the bottom of the chin to the bottom of the nose, what I'm seeing in actuality and what I see on my screen are two different things. So I'm looking at the video screen trying to show you how I'm measuring that. It's not exactly accurate from when I'm actually looking at it. But so bottom of the nose right there to that keystone, that dot. I'll check it now in the actual one. It will look different on your screen, but so it's the same. So I notice that from here to here is the same from there to there. That's a great thing to get accurate. So I'm going to put my dot wherever I think that is. There's the bottom of the nose. There's the bottom of the chin. And I'll come in here and I'll measure it. And you can see what the problem is. You see how my paintbrush is going over top of that keystone mark. So what is that telling me? What's too short or what's too long? You guys tell me. Look what's going on. What's going on? So they're supposed to be the same, but my brush is going over top of the keystone from the bottom of the nose. What's too short or too long?
You could probably bring the chin up a little bit.
Yeah, it could be this area is too long or the nose is too short, right? If I know that this is correct from the chin to the top of the head to the sides, I've already established that, right? So if I start moving the chin, a little bit of a problem, right? Because I've already established the height versus the width. That was my very first establishment, which is really important. So what could I do if I know the chin is in the right location? So I would say that either this keystone's too high or the bottom of the nose is too high. Maybe the nose is too short. But we can check, then before I check the length of the nose, I'll check the keystone. Let's come from the top of the head to the keystone and see what that is relation from the keystone to the bottom of the head. So let's check that. That's more of an overall measurement. And I know this is, for some of you, it might just be daunting by just watching this painfully. Like, Adamson, are you ever going to paint this thing? Are you just going to sit there and measure all day? Well, those who are really good portrait artists know about what I'm doing right now, and they spend the time doing it, at least for accuracy. And later on, we can talk about the spontaneity and going in and just slapdashing in a portrait. We'll do that later. But right now, we're really learning how to get some accuracy here. So I'm going from the keystone to the top of the head, and then I notice that that's about to the bottom of the lip. So from here to here, is about the same from here to the bottom of the lip. And see if I've got that in the right location, and that will tell me if my keystone's right. It's kind of there. So I'm finding that there's the bottom of the lip, there's the keystone. So from here, I've got to say where that point is. It's right there. So from there to there should be the same as from there to there. And I do have it. You see how it's to the bottom of the lip. So there, I've got that keystone in the right location. So that tells me the nose is too short, which was kind of my suspicion. Lower it. If I'm going to lower the nose, then I probably need to lower the mouth a little bit. I notice that there's, now let's see if these two are the same. Now they're the same. That little change made a huge difference. You may not think so right now, but later on in this painting, it'll come out. And if I don't change it, then I'll just be polishing the turd, like our beloved Chad Erickson says. I'm finding this. Can you see the angle right there? If I could draw on this guy, there's that plane change, right? There's the plane change. That's why it's so nice to have one of these heads, because if you're doing an actual person, you can kind of see how it's dropping down there, even though it's all rounded and nice and natural, you can see it dropping. And even though it goes into, even though the cheek is kind of sucking in there, like we were saying when people get older and stuff, that's why the second guy is taking it a little further. So that little cheek part there, right there with those little triangle planes. But right now, I'm just going after the major one. I'm not worried about. I got to get the major. Find that angle. It's going to come down sort of the bottom of the mouth. I got to find those angles first. Probably like those big angles because you can always doctor up the angles later. So I'm just sort of putting a mask on this guy for a minute here. And there's that point. There's that point. This point's here. This is here. Playing ping pong again. I'm looking back and forth. My eyes going like this, by the way. This is what my eye's doing. You got to get into the habit of just letting your eye go back and forth. Up, 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 up. And sometimes I'll be drawing while my eye's over here. Like right now, I'm over here and I'm drawing, but my eye's on the model. A little bit of a blind, modified contour drawing. But my eye is constantly going back and forth like this. The problem with a lot of artists, and a lot of students especially, is they'll keep their eye on here. And they'll just keep looking, and then once in a while they'll look over here and then they wonder why they can't get, the likeness or whatever. And I'm finding that this needs to be moved over because I was playing ping pong with my eyeball. I'm starting to break up the shapes a little bit more. So you can see the cast shadow, the coarse shadow along the side of the head. That can be used as a plane change because that's where it's changing. So he's gonna look like a little bit of a planer head here. And that's how your paintings will look of actual people and even photos of people. Not that you have to worry so much about, making a planer head out of it, but finding those major angles will really come into play where you can then contour out those angles later when everything is set. Again, Slow is fast. We were to, you can even start masking in a few of these shapes if it helps you. There's the, I think the top of my nose. See, I'm making little adjustments to these lines constantly. And I can tell your eye is pretty good at judging smaller distances rather than larger distances. There's actually a plane change right there. That's right at the keystone. But your eye is pretty good at making distant. I'm going to redraw my center line here. I'm at a bit, even though on your camera it looks like you're probably straight on. Where I'm sitting, it's a bit of a 3/4. You see, so with my view, I'm a little bit shorter here and a little bit longer here. It's just going to remind me that that's going to start turning back into the. It's about a good time to get the mirror out and look at the reflection through the mirror. And I try to look at both the model and my painting at the same time through the mirror. I'm playing ping pong. When I'm looking through the mirror, I'll do that for a couple of minutes and just back and forth, back and forth. Your eye gets pretty good at that. Looking for these major shapes. I'm noticing some interesting things already. And also keeping in mind that once you continue with the process of painting, you can always keep adjusting. You want to know that that's okay. You can keep adjusting. There's that shape, that triangle shape. There's that top of the lip. It's catching John was saying there. There's that top of the lip. And then here's the underside of the, I can just almost see the value there. You can, nothing's saying that you can't put in some value while you're drawing that might help you to see those shapes. This has got some value underneath it, his chin. If we were really to do a planar thing, it would go down like this. This is all in shadow, so if I feel pretty good about that, let's just put a first pass of shadow in here. I'm going to probably darken this. Right now, for all intents and purposes, the cast shadow on the neck and the side of the face is the same. And if I feel like I got these shapes pretty good, you may not see the shape very accurately until you get the value in there. And again, even though I see some eyeballs and eyelids and stuff on this guy, I'm completely forgetting about that for right now. This is such an important part that people forget. You got to just think of it as like the skeleton, like there's just holes, those eye holes in the skeleton. I'm doing a little bit of a wipeout, you can see here, but so I'm just been using, I haven't gotten my white paint yet because I've been able to wipe out areas. Now I'm kind of doing a bit of that contour right there where the side of that is the cheekbone that comes down there and crosses over. The little T principle right there. Talk about my crossing. And I measured the width versus the height from the head. And now I can do some plumb lines and some, from where I'm sitting, I can see where's the top of the ears. Boy, they're way, from where I'm sitting, they're way above the eye. Well, not way above, but the eye level, it goes right through, almost through the middle of the ear. Almost through the middle of the ear, because I'm kind of sitting above it. And I can also find an angle from, say, that point of the head to the top of the ear, and I can hold my paintbrush up there, find that angle. Let me see a little tiny part of the ear over here from where I'm sitting. Now I put some black paper behind here just on purpose, because a lot of the references you'll be using, I'll get a photograph of this guy up on the website. There's already some cast heads. There's even one of Washington, George Washington, and a couple others that you could work from if you want. But I'm using I'm back here in the background that's black. And I just want to get some of that in there right away, just to show, you can see how much more relationship you have of that value versus when I put the dark. Because I'm seeing dark back here, so I want to get to that as soon as I can. I don't want to. Probably should get a bigger brush, but not. Need to get a little bit of that dark back there, just to show me kind of where I can work negatively the head too, which shows me a lot of things. I can see how this starts to cut in here behind the ear, and then there's this cut in here. So sometimes rather than shaping by actually painting on the head or the person, I look at the background. I'm looking at the background now, and I'm going like this, it cuts in here like this, goes around. So that's probably enough for now, just to show me where some things are happening. You can see how intentional. I don't know if I'd say, the word may not necessarily be, careful. I guess it is, I'm being a bit careful, but I think it's more intentional and observational as I'm painting, and it's kind of methodical, kind of slow. Again, there's other ways that we can paint. They're more exciting. We can, start really doing stuff that's spontaneous. But those guys that you watch on those videos that you pay hundreds of dollars to go watch, or those big conventions, they don't always show you this kind of stuff because they're just putting on a show. I'm afraid they're just putting on a show. It's like a show. It doesn't really teach you what they're doing. But the problem is they do the really cool slapdash stuff and do something in a half an hour. And you're like, wow, how did they do that? That's so cool. I'm gonna buy that video, which I've done myself too. I think it is really cool. But they've done this for years. What I'm doing, they've learned this stuff for years, and so they can go in there or whatever, months or whatever. They paint every day, so it's a little misleading when you see some of these guys, and they're like, you can do this too. Well, yeah, if we put the same time you put into it, and so just saying that what you guys are learning is really, really super good. Now I found that if I'm doing some more measuring. What's the bottom of the nose? Oh, the bottom of the nose, the bottom of the ear is a lot higher than that. My goodness. So see, I just checked that. And then that little angle there then comes down where my initial line was, where I need to have it there. And then on the other side, it's more similar. So if I bottom of the ears and going across, playing a little ping pong, this is up here. So I'm doing a little bit of the, where those plane changes are. I'm finding some, I'm using the shadow. You can see I'm kind of combining a few of the efforts and the skills that we're learning. There's the shape of the shadow underneath that lip. There's a cast shadow right underneath the nose. There's always a cast shadow right there. Right now, I'm just trying to still locate. I know that my values are going to change quite a bit. I'm just trying to see, I'm kind of redrawing even here, a little more accurate than what I'm actually seeing. This shape here, there's going to be a front plane of the head, just so we don't get confused. Let's take out the center one for now. Now I'm going to go back after all that, and I'm going to go back and do, guess what? The main, very first measurement I just did, the width versus the height. And it's still what I mean, it hasn't changed on this guy, obviously. And if I know the proportion of what I was looking at, it was like 1 and 1 and a fourth or something, or what was that? That's why I redo it here. Width, like 1. And I check mine. It's the same proportions. I'm finding that I've got my guy a little too wide. But I also recognize that the top of his forehead goes about right here. And then it goes back, it slopes up. So this is the top of the cranium here. Give it a little bit more space around there. I'm looking at these angles, by the way. Angle, angle, and I can check them. This is probably a good spot to check angles. Probably a good spot to get a plumb line out. See, like the corner of that eye lines up with the corner of the mouth. Even though I don't have my eyes in there yet, I can put little points in there if I want to say, well, that might be where the pupil is. Seems like that I need to have a little more space with the neck. So this is where I'm going to start using some white paint. So then I just take some of this white paint and I start mixing up with a little bit of my medium. And I get some of the value, maybe of a middle tone value, or some of the values, and just start matching the values that I see up here. See what this will be. If I get something that's about the same value as the board, then I can start working with a little bit. I can say that I need to clean this up because I can see there's this nice shape right there. Just enough paint to get something down. And then this is a real critical part here. When I put the first value on of a plane, then I'm looking around and saying, what other planes are similar to the top of the nose, for example? And you can tell by the certain angles of other planes if they're similar to the angle and the way they're facing the light source, like the angle right here, there's this little angle of the forehead here that's probably similar right there. It's almost the same as my underpainting. So I can see this angle right up here is similar. So if I put a Some of that still kind of the same, but it's cleaning up some of my drawing lines is what it's doing as well. The top of that lip, you know, there are 3 planes there. Remember from our planer guy where we've got a plane there, one here, and one over here. This is all kind of in shadow. Always err on the side of not too light and not too dark. So if I'm going in with my lights, I'm erring on the side of not light enough because I want to give myself room to move around. Looking through the mirror again. You don't want to shoot everything right, you know, and go overshoot it. But now I'm going to mix up. Now that I've got one brush that's for my lights, and one brush is going to be for my darks. So I'm going to start mixing up some of this value over here that might be for the dark. Something similar to what I've got here. So I can start cleaning up a little bit. This is what we call back painting. I can widen. I needed to widen this out a little bit. So and even on the dark planes, what's similar? Well, that's all fairly similar. So all of the dark planes, one plane for now, and then you can break up the reflected lights a little bit later. It'll probably get a little darker underneath the eye socket. But you can see how it's starting to turn form even now. This plane, so try to find like planes that are like what you're doing with on your brush. So I've got a brush that's my shadow brush and brush that's my light brush, and it's just a little more efficient. It's just how I work. Paul Davis taught me how to do that, and it's kind of an efficient way to go, so I still do that. There's that front plane. Now I know that if that front plane is that value, whoops, I got a little bit of, then if I'm going to start turning form, here's this plane here, here's this plane, I can see it. Then I can take that value that I've got here and add a little bit of dark and start stepping it down, right? I can just start stepping it down and then test it. I'm always testing. It's not quite like what I want, maybe just a little bit lighter. So don't go in here and do your mixture and then just fill in the thing, test it. Stick it down there like that. Say, well, that looks pretty good, but it's a little too dark, so I'm going to lighten it up a little bit. And I can fill in this. This is the paint by number that you guys are talking about. It's kind of fun. So there's a little bit of this plane work going on, like a little bit of this planer work. Over here, this plane's on the light side, so it's going to be a little darker than that, but not quite as much. Subtle. A lot of things in the portrait are subtle. Now I'm seeing some other things, and I'm going to get a brush that's going to be my cleanup brush. And if I see these things right away, I'm going to go back into the background for a minute. Clean up a couple of things. Angle, oh, much better. You start seeing some of these things, just clean them up. Overall, these big shapes, a lot of, yeah, back to the shadow brush here. See, I can keep going back and forth and back paint and then There we go. See, I'm adjusting. I keep playing ping pong with my eyes, by the way. And this is actually, this drop down to jaw. I've kind of got my jaw shortchanged a little bit. I want to just keep thinking of those one value for right now. Just weld the values together. Pete Bond had a really great article. He talked about welding values together. Underside plane of all those planes right there. See, how I kind of messed this cast shadow up. Well, there's no problem. I can come back in and with the lighter brush, clean it up. We know that fulcrum, whatever they call right above there, right above the lip, is a little bit darker. And this one's a little bit lighter. See how I'm turning the form? Because my light source is coming this way, so these areas in here are a little bit lighter. At some point, you want to go in and find where you've got a highlighter too. Of course, on this guy, there's not a lot of highlights. There's not really a lot of reflectivity, but look at through my mirror again. If you don't have a mirror, then you want to make sure you keep getting up away from your chair and backing away from it and looking what you need to do.
Hey, Rob, I have a comment about the mirror. When I don't have a mirror right next to me, I use my phone to take a picture and flip it.
Oh, that's a great idea, Longo. Yeah, just use your phone. Take a picture of it and then reverse it. There you go. Like that. This plane here is on the light side, so there is some dark here. And this is a good point here. We're going to get into smaller shapes here. So there's a dark here. It's going underneath the cheekbone, kind of that sucked into the cheek, and then it comes back out. This whole area here, I can see this is kind of back, this is sort of in shadow. So if I get my shadow brush, and of course this shadow is on the light side of the head, so it's not going to be quite as dark as the shadows on the other side. See how I'm testing? I keep testing it until I'm satisfied. And this is going to be a little darker than the underpainting. Now that's a little too dark for what I'm seeing, but I can line it up a little bit here. And I always try to keep an eye out kind of overall the whole painting, big shapes and things that are happening. I'm going to go to a little bit, go ahead, yes?
Do you ever use triangulation in a portrait?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Okay.
Thanks for bringing that up, Elodie. I'll show you right here. I'm gonna put in a couple of lighter areas that I know that I can see those, just to right here it's fairly light. These are kind of like highlights, but I'll come back in and play with them a little bit more. Just showing me some of the points of this plane right here is a little bit lighter. You'll usually see highlights on the top of a cheekbone from someone, right here on the corner of the nose. You're going to see a bit of a highlight up here where this plane, there's a little plane right there on this guy, and then it goes back up. So you see it's a little bit lighter right here. So see, I'm testing it. I'm testing it. Here we go. And then it goes, and there's another one over here, but it goes back into the shadow a bit more, create that bit of that shelf. Yeah, triangulation. So here's a good triangle to always look for, and that is if you can locate where the pupil of the eyes are, and you can measure those as well. You can measure, from pupil to pupil. I'm not drawing them yet. I'm just using them. And see what's that distance. It's about the same as, oh, isn't that convenient? It's about the same as from the bottom of the nose to the bottom of the chin. So you always find areas that you already know are correct. Like we've already measured this space, we've already measured this space, we've measured the width. Then when you start looking at the features, you can measure, against those features on your model. So a lot of times people will say the distance between the eyes are about one eye. But what's it's about the same as from the bottom of the chin to the bottom of the nose. So if I can locate in my eyeball, I'm locating these. They may not be in the exact right location, but if I can get the distance, it should be about the same as that, which it is. Okay, very good. So my eyes saw that pretty well. Then if I can find the angle, if they're really straight across, or if there's a bit of a tip or an angle, I'm going to always get that angle right. And they're pretty level. I don't know if you guys can see these black dots. They're just dots right now. They're not eyeballs. They're just dots. And if you put a dot right on the nose, tip of the nose, and even if I'll do it right here to wash this off, but there's the dot, dot, dot. Then you measure that triangle. You measure, we already know this is horizontal, so that's horizontal. But if we get these angles correct, if you can find this angle right here from the tip of the nose to the pupil and see if your angle is the same, that means that your nose length is correct and that it's all in the right location. Now we got to check the other side of that angle, of that triangle. This is triangle of the eye and nose. This is a really good way to measure. And I'm seeing those pretty well. So I saw that visually pretty well. But see, if my angle is off, for example, if my angle's off and it actually should be more like this, then that means my nose needs to be longer, right? Or if the angle is more like this, then that will make the nose shorter. So, but make sure when you're finding angles is to keep that angle steady. Don't do this. I see a lot of students do this and move the angle so that it matches their incorrect angle. And it's a left brain thing, I think. I think we don't mean to do that. So there's one sort of triangulating that if you can find, and other triangulation, you can go from the corner of the mouth to the tip of the ear. What's that angle? Maybe from the corner of the mouth to the other ear. Check that angle. In true triangulation, you try to find 2 points that are at the correct place, like maybe the corner of the forehead here, in this corner of the forehead. If we know those two points are in the right location, if we need to find the bottom of the lip or the bottom of the chin or the bottom of the nose, we can find those two same locations on the model and find those angles. I can say, what's the angle from that point to the bottom, to the top of the lip, and then check it on the other side, from that angle, what's the corner of the eye to the bottom of the lip, and then see if my angle is the same from that point to the bottom of the lip or the bottom of the chin. You can check an angle. So if you have a known place that has 2 points, you can always check the angle, and that'll tell you the length of the height or the width of things. Well, that's very good that you mentioned that, Elodie. The triangulating, or just really, for all intents and purposes, is just finding angles, really. Finding angles. So from this point here, we're kind of getting to close to the end here, but I want to show you that this is the main thing that I wanted to show you because it's so important. Let's clean up, kind of translating the plane, and then I want to show you in a couple of areas before we run out of time. I want to show you how I'm going to soften some edges so that it will be natural. This is what we were talking about, how now like Michelangelo carving into his marble, he can start softening some of those edges, right? Some of those edges he can start softening. So that's what we start to do here. Top of the ears catching light right there. Put that in. And then this plane right there is turning back. So I'm going to test, it's going to be a little darker than that, but not by much. And I can overpaint it. If I'm kind of worried about it, I can just overpaint it right into the background if I want, because I can always come back in with my cleanup brush, clean it up, back paint it. All this stuff I'm talking about, back painting and cleanup and stuff, is the same for whatever we paint, landscape. So it's a real oil paint technique that makes it feel like you don't have to keep within the lines. There's a certain sense, I think, especially of you guys that are perfectionists, I'm kind of one of them, that you've got these lines and you want to paint right up to the edge of the line. You don't want to mess the line up, right? But this is where you can paint, like this, and not so worried about that edge. But then if I come back and then I really want to clean it up, then I can come back in and back paint it, sharpen it up, see. Angle of that ear is a little bit different. So what's possible with oil paints is you can do that. Starts to turn form here. See, it kind of turns underneath, and then we've got a little bit of a lighter. I want to show you how to pull the eyes out of the head. But you see, I won't do that until all of this is correct. This is kind of that planar position that you were in, that you guys all did today. It doesn't have to be, exactly like we were doing today. It can be some combinations of, this is a little bit lighter, this little plane change here because it's on the surface and it's on top of these sockets. So there's a little keystone there. You see how but you can see now that I can, this is changing plane here too. Let's just do this quick here. There's the plane change there. This will be a little bit darker as well as it turns the form of that lip. And that kind of goes into the shadow. And then the front of the chin. I can clean up my center lines with overpainting it. My chin is probably a little bit too long. Like he's got a little goatee on there right now, but it's because I got some dark lines on him. So if we model, if we go in and start modeling this guy, then like let's do the nose. Let me show you how I model the nose and maybe part of that cheek right there. Okay, so now that you've got, well, even more simple than that. Let's start up here on the forehead. You got these planes, and maybe we don't want planes shown on our final portrait. There's a couple of ways you can just clean up those planes, right? Now, assuming everything's correct, there's probably things that are not exactly correct with this, but given the time, I want to just show you how I clean up a couple of edges. There's a couple of ways to do it. One way is you can come back and you've got a plane here that's a value and a plane here that's a value. If you can mix up something right between those two. So if I come down here and I'm on my palette and I'm mixing up something that's a little bit darker than this, a little bit lighter than that. Of course, that's way too dark, so I'm going to go in and mix some more light paint. There we go. Now we're getting close. If you can mix something right between those two, you can run your brush with that new color right down where you broke the plane, and it will soften it up. I've got a little darker on this side, so I'm going to add a little bit of the light. You can make another stroke right here. See, I just lost that line. I like doing it like that by painting fingers a little bit. The other way you can do it is take the back of your brush and then just, if you got enough paint on here, you can just, you don't want to just blend everything. I don't like that. We like to use the textile term like you're a quilter, like knit those two edges together. And this one's a little bit more of a sharper turn, but I can still sort of blend that. You see, if I've got my values, you guys with your and I could have had you guys go ahead with your planer heads and just done this. It would have been more of a natural head by just softening your edges. You could just soften your edges, right? So that's one way. Let's do it in the nose. Let's do it in the nose. How I'll form that nose here real quick. So we've got that shadow edge on the form edge. Same idea. If I go in and I find a value, got some of the dark, and I got a value that I can just soften that edge or blend it. You see how I just soften that? Look how I just turned that edge right there. So form shadows are usually softer, right? And then you can see the little shadow that comes underneath the ball of the nose there. And the shadow. So now I'm in the same shadow color that I was using over here, but now I'm just being a little bit more particular. See, and there's the shadow underneath the nose area. There's the cast shadow. You can see how it starts to get a natural feel to it. If we went over here, let's just blend some of these planers over here. See, look how this nice turning of that cheek. When we get into colors, if I put that stroke down and it's still too dark and I keep lightening it up, and I can kind of step it. I just keep lightening the, you can just step it right up there. See how that, and I can get that soft and soften it. Like how I just turn that very nicely. Turn that nicely. I overpainted a little bit in the background there, so I can just come back and clean it up. That's too light. You can see how that light, it's too light. It's jumping out too much because it's around this other stuff. But let me show you how I pull the light of the eye out now. So once you've got the value where your socket is, let's just establish that just a tiny bit more here. Hang with me here. I know we're getting close to the end here, but this is getting close. Show you some things. Establish that shape. I'm reestablishing this shape here as much as I can. There's a little bit of an over that. And all I'm thinking of is shape. I'm not even thinking about eye. I'm looking at that whole thing and I'm pretending it's all in dark. Now, if you can locate where the pupil is, and I'm bouncing back and forth, and I'm seeing what's the distance from there to that pupil, somewhere right about here, and sort of find it. You can find that area there. Then I'm going to establish with a smaller brush, I'm going to go up here and find this eyelid. You can see there's a little stripe of dark there, so it's going to be, you can even take the back of your brush and sort of draw where you think it is. Take a guess. See how kind of, see this is the beauty, this is actually how our eye sees, is rather than drawing the eye, we're sculpting the eye out of that socket, out of the dark. That's what they say in oil painting. You always go for the, you establish the darks, then you can start pulling the lights out of the dark. Now look, with that little bit of information, isn't that interesting? How much of you're like, oh, there's an eye there all of a sudden. Now we know, and I've got the Stefan Baum thing I want to show you, but the eye has planes to it. Plane, plane, plane. Just like in this guy here, so what I want you to start seeing is that plane, 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 just like the mouth, right? Plane. And I've got to show you. I'm going to put in the assignment link this thing from Stephen Baum that shows the eye as a plane. So I can say that this side plane is getting most light right there. So even if I put this little brush stroke, I've got a kind of even a messy brush here. Look at this. There's the plane. And then I'm going to go with the little bit less of the value there. And there's the plane here. And then it turns into the shadow. I might see a little bit of a plane, but it's darker, right? And I might establish where the pupil might be. And then if I see the bottom, I could get a brush that would match what I'm trying to do, use the right tools, and I got a nice long. So again, a little bit more in light, and then we can see kind of painting the crossways here. You can see how that eye is being formed within the socket. And then I can back paint. The same idea of back painting. Some of the darks up in here in the shadow, and I can back paint. There's a cast shadow that's going right underneath that eyelid got two. And shape it better. And then the light that's coming here on the top of the cheek, I can put that in because then it will allow the bottom lid to shape. I'm shaping around the bottom lid right here now. You see how I'm building that eye out of there? And I'm not really drawing an eye in my mind. I'm just painting shapes. Get the idea? Get the idea? Okay. lighter here. You guys have any questions? Soften this. This side of the nose. Sometimes we don't see where there's the, the light side. Somebody was saying one time, there is a separation. I see a little bit of a darker place there. But let me just put on a few highlights here and show you how this really starts to make it sing. Paint's thicker. Soften a little bit there. Kind of establishing. There's a little bit of a cast shadow right here on the chin. This little shape here that's in light is on the shadow side, and this is like a sky hole for you guys that are tree landscape people. This is like a sky hole. So if I put the lights that I have over here and here, it'd be too light. You got a simultaneous contrast. You want to darken that a little bit so it doesn't appear too light, because I can even darken that a little bit more. You see. Even more so along there. Then I can get a little bit of reflected light down in here. Test your reflected light. Don't get too crazy. See, there's a little bit of where the cheekbone comes down. Soften this edge. By the way, that's a core shadow, so we got to make sure we get that core shadow a little bit darker, right? Not that dark. Okay, I'm there. I'm out of time. Hang with me. Core shadow. Core shadow right here. Core shadows will also create a lot of your reflective lights automatically. Okay, well, that gave you some ideas